Welcome to the Engineering, Emotions, and Energy podcast. I'm your host, Justin Wink. Today we have a great guest, Brock Cannon, founder and CEO of Prevail Botanicals. So welcome, Brock, to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
So I kind of just want to go over what I'm trying to accomplish here and why I think you're going to be a fantastic guest, because it was reading your bio and going over some of your YouTubes, and I'm super interested. So the reason I started this podcast is kind of for people that maybe have had a journey similar to mine, where they followed the rules, they were good at school, got a good job, successful on paper, life is fantastic, but they just don't feel fulfilled. Like it's an empty, unfulfilled life. And this show is all about finding ways to get that fulfillment so that you can not just feel good on paper, but feel good in your everyday life and bring that to other people so that they can have the kind of life that they want to have. So not just an empty paper kind of life. And just a little bit about my background is, so I basically work in the tech sector, got a Ph.D. in electrical engineering because I was super good at school. So went as far as that. Then I got my first job and did really well in that. And I'm like, I'm making good money. I've done everything I should be super happy, but I just wasn't. And that was about 8 years ago when I realized that and started learning and really get into, what actually makes for a fulfilling life. And a lot of that has to do with emotions, which I sort of define as that's what you're feeling in your body that really dominates the decisions we usually make day to day. It's usually based on how we feel, not on what we think is best for us. And then energy, which is just sort of like on one level, it's, hey, am I ready to go take on the day? But also it's sort of that, how are we connected to those around us and the universe as a whole? And when I saw, that you were open to being a guest on my show, at first I was kind of like, Brock's an athlete. I come from a corporate life, cube dweller. What do we have in common? And then I remembered that I'd seen an article about this concept of the corporate athlete in a Harvard Business Review, that really working corporate life is almost like being an athlete because it's day in, day out, and you got to pay attention to the body and the emotions and not just the mind, because it's a long haul being in a corporate career. And so I think we actually probably have a lot more in common, because I know after lots of years doing cubicle living that I started to get the aches and pains, which I believe was kind of one of the reasons why you started your company. Because now I kind of want to bring it back to you, Brock. So you spent most of your life as a professional athlete, right? Professional, is it downhill mountain biking or mountain biking?
Yeah, cross-country mountain bike racing primarily.
And was it you did that for about 16 years?
Yes, started pretty young. Now, I will I will say the term professional should be used loosely, because in mountain bike racing and very similar, I think, to other like endurance sports, it's typically not like the NBA or the NFL where you're making tons of money and you're getting paid to do it. It's pretty common in mountain bike racing for even like a lot of pros to have like a job on the side or be doing something else. There's just not a lot of money in the sport. So I always had other things on the side, but like, to be technically correct, yes, like I raced professional. So yeah.
You were able to make at least some money doing what you loved, and you had some various other, any notable of those side jobs while you were kind of living your dream?
Well, I mean, I started racing when I was 16. So I think my parents kind of supported me in that endeavor until, maybe I was, out of the house or whatever. But, it's like once I was 21, I got married very young, and it was kind of like a wake up call. I'm like, at the best, I could probably make like 30 to 40,000 a year doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think I was a server for a while, just hustling, doing whatever I could. And then I, ended up kind of getting into sales and marketing for the next decade or so, and real estate investing and stuff like that on the side. But, my passion was always mountain bike racing and cycling for so long.
So you ultimately ended up in sort of sales and marketing type stuff. Did that did that help sort of your career as a cyclist? Because is there a little bit of selling, marketing yourself to get sponsors and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There always kind of was, every fall putting the race resume together and learning how to promote yourself. I mean, it was such a different world back then too. Like, I think the opportunities today for athletes to promote themselves, is just significantly more with social media and everything else. But back then it was kind of like, list your race results and send it out to some companies that you were interested in getting sponsorship from. And then they'd kind of hook you up with gear or maybe pay for some of your race fees or travel. And, that was kind of it. And then you'd wear their stuff or, race on their equipment. And that was about the extent of it back then. It's just crazy how much it's changed.
And by send, are we even to the point where we're sending out emails, or was this get a stamp and post off, mail it off, and then hope for a snail mail response?
It might have been, yeah, it might have actually been snail mail back in the day. Cause I mean, I started racing in 1996 and then, the internet didn't really pick up until the 2000s. So it very well could have been.
Yeah. Cause that was definitely dial up days, and late 90s was the start of cable internet. I know I was, an early nerd and got cable internet probably before a lot of people in like 1998 or something like that. But yeah, it was still very much an analog, mail world. So after 16 years, you decided to switch to ultra running, and maybe go a little bit of what ultra running is, and then I'm curious of uh, why. That was when
Yeah,
when I
great
was reading your
question.
bio. I'm just like, what? Why go from one, to me, really, really challenging sport to what's even seems more challenging? And maybe it's obvious once you explain it to me.
Yeah, well, no, it's a crazy sport. No question. So 2016, I'd been traveling a lot for work for the past few years, and it got incredibly difficult to be able to train on the bike when I was traveling. And to be clear, I was traveling about 240 days per year. So I was like a road
Whoa.
warrior, gone all the time. I was doing real estate investment workshops all over the US and Canada. So I was constantly gone, home for a few days during the week. And it came to the point where I was just like, I literally can't put the miles in on the bike to be competitive. So what was feasible though was to pack my running shoes no matter where I was and start running. And I literally hated running. I I thought it was like the most boring thing on the planet. I would run like sometimes in the off season with cycling, I'd run like a couple of days a week, like maybe upwards of 3 miles just to like cross train. But like I hated it. I just thought it was the worst, most miserable thing on the planet. And then the more I started doing it, and particularly like whenever I could find trails and that would just kind of take me into beautiful places that I actually felt like I couldn't get in on a mountain bike. So that was kind of a new, unique perspective. I started to like it. And, I didn't really take it super serious. And then in 2016, during the summer, I like went up this one mountain in just up the canyon from Salt Lake City, Utah, where I grew up. And I don't know what it was about this mountain. It's called Mount Superior, and it's just this grandiose mountain. It's across from Snowbird Ski Resort. And I just became addicted to running / hiking up this mountain. And that like put me into this frenzy for the whole summer where I decided to summit every single major peak in the greater Salt Lake City, Wasatch Mountain area. And I was just like out every day or every other day, like reaching the summits of all these peaks, upwards of 10 or
About
11,000 feet.
about how many peaks of that size are there,
Um,
or did you end up doing?
I think I ended up doing about 30 peaks, somewhere in
Wow.
that area.
And
And, somewhere as low as maybe like 9,000 feet and somewhere, a little over 11,000 feet. That was about as tall as they get there. It's not quite like Colorado.
And I do want to touch on something that I think is a really, really cool thing is you turned something that you said you initially hated and it became something you loved. Because I've noticed that so many things that that get us to be who we're meant to be, they usually involve overcoming doing something that at first blush we just absolutely hate. Some people, it's, they want to get working out at the gym. It's like, well, I hate waking up early, or I hate doing push-ups or something. And to get over it, you got to turn what you hate into something you love. And it sounded like it, at first it was a necessity. You're like, hey, I got to do something. And then you were like, well, maybe running doesn't have to be out on a boring street or on a boring treadmill. And you made it your form of running, which was out in nature. Was there anything else that sort of, that shifted, where it became not just I'm doing this because I have to, but I now get to do this? Because just a really cool shift in your mindset I saw.
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment, without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Yeah, and I think you make such a fantastic point there, because it's like anything in life in the beginning. I mean, even when we were all little babies, like it wasn't comfortable to walk, like we're falling down, but we continued to walk because ultimately you see your parents and everyone else in the world is walking and you want to walk. So we keep doing it, and it's like we get away from that. And I run into so many people that are always like, Brock, how on earth do you like to run? You came from cycling. It seems like the most ridiculous thing in the world. And I say, I didn't. Like, it sucked for a while. But I think with any new skill or any new endeavor that we're picking up, and that can be business related or even entering the new realm of a relationship or a new sport, like it's going to hurt. We're going to be sore. It's going to be painful. There's going to be times where we're just like, I don't like this. And I think that's the problem with most people. They quit before they push through this zone to where it actually becomes fun. And when does it actually become fun? It becomes fun when we're getting stronger. And there's always this moment where we finally get to where, like in my case, with running, it was like you're out on the trail finally and you're like, oh, I actually feel good. Like there's a rhythm to my breath. Like my muscles aren't excruciatingly sore, like they're burning, but they're not like how it was in the beginning. And I think with anything in life, the stronger and more well balanced at it and disciplined we are in it, like it's more fun. So I tell people that are always asking me, they're like, do you think I could run a marathon? Like I hate to run, but I've done like a 5K. I'm like, of course you could run a marathon. Like, and you could actually get to the point where it could be fun, because it's just pushing through those initial like first couple months where it kind of sucks.
Yeah. You bring up such a good point about that. If it's new, it's going to be shitty for a point. Like there's the honeymoon where, hey, I'm doing something fun. This is new. This is cool. And then it sucks, and like, as you said, it's in relationships, it's in work endeavors in addition to physical activity. And if we see that that's just part of the process of getting to it where, oh, this just becomes fun and easy and just something I do, it's no big deal. But so many of us stop just before we we get that yummy dessert of and actually enjoying it. So I think that's such a really cool uh, reminder that whenever starting something, that hey, you just got to get over the part that sucks. It's part of the process.
1,000%, 1,000%.
Now, so you got to loving running, And at what point do you go back to get to, well, maybe now I don't love it so much because it's having a toll on my body. How long did you get to enjoy running? These beautiful trails, very long, doing these peaks, and I'm guessing other activities before you start to notice something's up.
Yeah, well, I was telling someone just the other day, I think over lunch, I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were like, "Oh, I've gotten into cycling and I used to run." And like, it's so funny because I literally feel like I did it backwards. Like most people run, blow out their knees, have all these issues, and their doctor tells them to get a bike and start cycling. And I kind of did the reverse. So it's like, I remember 2016, kind of midway through the summer, I was doing all these peaks. And yeah, like I was absolutely having fun. I was getting really good shape. And, the issue is like I wasn't recovering fast and my knees were so ridiculously inflamed, like more inflamed in a way than I had ever obviously felt like on the mountain bike, and just everything hurt. And so,
So what at this time, what were you trying to do for recovery at this point? Was you just stretching or?
Yeah, just stretching. I've never been as good at stretching as I should be. I think I was better back in the day when I was racing bikes. And I think so many of us are all kind of lazy with our stretching. Still tough for me. But, stretching and just trying to get good rest and trying to eat foods that would rebalance me quickly. Although I will admit there was some days after being on a peak for 8 hours, I came back and like absolutely just wanted a pizza. But
oh yeah. Yeah.
But like balancing out, greens and, alkalinity in my system and the things that I needed to recover. That's kind of what I was trying, just more through nutrition, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me going back to people going, "Hey, can I run a marathon?" And pretty much anybody can. To me, it's why do you want to run the marathon? And I've noticed so many people. It's like, well, I want to lose body fat, and I don't know if you. To me, it's the worst way if you just want to lose body fat. It's a great way if you want the accomplishment of having finished a marathon. But like you said, most people, they go for a long run, they just want a pizza. And
yeah.
People sort of conflate running and the runner's body and thinking that the running gets you the runner's body. No. It's usually people have that body and they like running more because it's easier when you have that runner's body. But if you don't, come into it with that, it's a challenge to get that body from running if you're coming from sort of, a place of obesity and ill health. At least that's been sort of my experience with some of the people I know.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, very true.
And so, the trying with the diet, doing some stretching, the pain, the inflammation. So is it just kept gradually getting worse, or was there sort of one thing that happened where you're just like, this is not working for me. I got to do something different.
Yeah, I remember one specific peak called Mount Olympus in just outside of Salt Lake City. That's just straight up, straight down, like 3 miles of just unbelievable vertical gain, and then you come crashing down, literally, just knee jarring downhill. And I remember in the middle of like hopping down these boulders, my knees just hurting so bad, my quads hurting so bad. It got to the point where I was just starting to take tons of ibuprofen. And it's funny because like looking back, I can't believe I took this much ibuprofen, but there was always a bottle of that in my house. Like growing up, my mom was a runner. My dad was a marathon runner. He did over 50 marathons. And I don't know why, like that's just how they coped with the inflammation. And so I started taking 6 200 milligram capsules in the morning and 6 200 milligram capsules at night. So 12 a day, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I started not really even feeling the effects of it that much. And so it was kind of a 2-part like aha moment. I was realizing this isn't actually really helping my inflammation that much. I'm not really feeling all that much relief. And secondly, I knew I was probably doing damage internally with all the side effects that NSAIDs have, like stomach lining bleeding, intestinal bleeding, like all this stuff that has been shown to happen when you take that much ibuprofen. So I got kind of nervous about that. And that's kind of when I started going on a botanical quest, if you will, to find something better that could really help me.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with. I had a similar experience with ibuprofen myself. Like, you go out, have a few too many drinks, pop some ibuprofen, have a hard workout, pop some ibuprofen. There was a time where most nights of the week to go to sleep, I was taking NyQuil just because, like, well, I kind of hurt and it's hard for me to go to sleep. That's got acetaminophen in it, another NSAID, and it was one of those, like, yeah, it wasn't really getting me any better, but it was, I guess, less bad if I didn't take it. And I
Right.
don't think even at the time I realized, I definitely didn't know about all the stuff it does to your stomach and intestinal lining, because I guess the same mechanism that reduces the pain and the inflammation also reduces your stomach lining's ability to repair itself. So it's funny. There's a laundry list of side effects, and most of those are just sort of like, those are the gross issues. I consider you're lucky if you have the severe side effects now, because really it's, well, what's it doing on a subtle level, impacting your ability to take in nutrition, to
Yeah.
because I about 5 months ago stopped pretty much taking ibuprofen or anything unless I really really need it, and uh, I've noticed improvements in how my appetite is, what I eat, and how my nutrition is, and it's been a lot easier to get fit, and um, also notice, hey, something's hurting, and doing more proper stuff to recover, not just taking a pill. So I don't know if you've noticed any side benefits, or in retrospect you're like, oh yeah, maybe that was part of why these other parts of my health were not going how I would like. If there were any other issues with the ibuprofen, just beside it's not doing the job that you had in your experience, or if it was just the concern of future issues.
Yeah, I think it was both. And then, ultimately I ended up learning more about cannabis, and I was completely closed to cannabis. I grew up super conservatively in Utah, as you might imagine, and was always scared of that. And then I had a friend he was actually an MD, and he had a terrible car accident. It hurt his back, and one day I met him in Chicago, and he was like sucking on this little pen, and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, "What is that?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like a vape pen. And he's like, it's medical cannabis. And this is like literally saved my back. And I was like, that's interesting, because I guess I still had such a stigma around cannabis and the people that smoked it or ingested it or consumed it. And here was this, in my eyes, really, really intelligent guy, very medically in tune. And he had done so much research and kind of started to slowly educate me on that. So, I became just open a crack during that time. And Utah was not a state that was legal, and still really isn't legal.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked for alternatives and found out that CBD, cannabidiol, was, kind of this derivative, same family of cannabis, so to speak, but, from the hemp plant in this case. And started getting curious. And ultimately that led me down the path of where I formulated a topical that literally saved my muscles and started helping me recover faster. And I was battle testing it every day on these peaks. And like, I was like, holy crap, I'm actually feeling a difference here. And that's really like how my whole company was born, and that whole thing. So it was crazy.
You created this just for yourself. So you went from taking 12 ibuprofen a day to basically none, and just using a topical salve based with CBD.
Yeah, and it was like kind of frustrated in the beginning because I was in so much pain, and so I started buying every CBD topical that I could find. And I started asking people that I knew, like, hey, what's a really strong one? What's a really potent one? Like, what have you found to be super effective? And then what's just like kind of bullshit? And I found this one that was manufactured in Colorado, and I contacted the manufacturer, and they kind of had like a base formula that they were using. And it was like, I'm trying to remember what the original milligrams of CBD they had in their topical was, but it was lower than what my current product is. But yet I tried it, and it was like the best that I had tried. And it wasn't just CBD, obviously. Like, they had some really fantastic essential oils in it, and other botanicals like comfrey leaf and calendula flowers and arnica and all these other things that were natural anti-inflammatories. And I fell in love with it, and I liked it, but it still wasn't strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
I was still like wishing it was a little stronger.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, working with them and ultimately formulating the Prevail salve that we have now. And it's like literally 3 times stronger than most of the stuff out there. And that's what it needed to be to really feel the effects.
So at any point during this, did you have starting a business in mind, or was this still mostly what you needed? The mother of motivation was your physical necessity.
It was really physical necessity initially. And it's so funny. I guess I'll throw like a life learning moment in here, because
Please.
I was trying to get off the road. Like I said, I was working on the road nonstop for years, and I was just completely burned out. And I had just moved to Santa Barbara, and I wanted to be in Santa Barbara. I loved it. I didn't want to travel every week. And I was like really struggling though. I had these skills as a presenter, a trainer, and doing all these things in these workshops, but I was finding myself in such a bad position to where I was applying for random jobs. And I had like never really had a job in my life. I'd always kind of been a scrappy entrepreneur with different things going on.
Right.
And I remember going into this one huge company. I'll just say, well, no, I won't name the company. It's out of Santa Barbara, but it had nothing to do with any of my background. But everyone's like, oh, it's such a good company. It's such a good company. And I interviewed for like an entry level sales position.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 3 interviews. And I was like, I'll for sure get it. Like, if anything, I'm like overqualified, I kind of went a little cocky. I'm like, I'm for sure going to get it. And then I got the email like a week later saying like I hadn't been accepted for the position. And it was $40,000 a year to start. And I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And it was just this humbling moment. And I'm like, all right, universe, what's going on? Like, I'm trying to get off the road. Like, that feels like the right thing to do. I'm trying to find something, but like nothing's clicking. And it was like interview after interview after interview, nothing was clicking. I'm like, something is up. And then one day, clear as day, like epiphany happened where I was like, I'm going to start my own company around this product. Like, this product works. Like, I've gotten it out to a few other people. Like, they're having amazing results. Like, how could I do this? And so it's just crazy. Like, I look back now, and sometimes I drive by that company on the freeway when I'm headed into Santa Barbara, and I'm like, thank God I didn't get that job. Like, I was mad at the time, but like, thank God I didn't get that job. And, because my company and brand and everything I've built now, like, it wouldn't have ever come into creation. So I think sometimes, even when we're in these misfortunate situations where we're frustrated, we feel like nothing's clicking, maybe the universe has a different plan for us. So.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't know at the time. We're so into our stuff that we miss the big picture. And sometimes it's amazing how people that don't really, that are effectively strangers, kind of get where we're at. Like, I know I've been in the position to hire people, and sometimes they are fantastic, and it's like, this is not a good fit. This person's too good to be here, or they're not gonna enjoy this, or we can't pay them enough. And so maybe we'd hire them, but would they stick around? Probably not. So let's just go. Let's let them find something where they want to stick around.
Yeah, totally. I get that.
And so that's sort of how. So that string of no led to you saying yes to yourself and starting Prevail.
Yeah. So it started really, really humble, and I remember in the beginning, I didn't even have the capital to start really the way I should have started a business, but I had every reason to do it. And really at that time, no other option. So I feel like I was kind of squeezed by the universe to to start it and just make it work and have trust and just kind of let go and surrender that it was going to work. And so I remember literally I didn't even have enough money for the initial batch to be manufactured. So I ended up like really aggressive.
This was the first batch to be able to sell, because I guess you've been doing your personal batches. Is that sort of a different amount, or?
Yeah, they were like really small sample batches that the manufacturer kind of was throwing my way. But to like really go into to like really start properly, we had a minimum number of units that we needed, and I didn't have enough capital for it. And so I remember I kind of built the website, I built the branding and got everything in place, and started building like potential ambassadors and customer lists, and then ended up pre-selling it. And it was literally the money from the pre-sales that funded the first batch and never looked back. So.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That is so cool. So now I kind of want to go into sort of, because as far as like CBD and THC, I consider myself pretty neutral. Like I don't know much, because I grew up probably similar to you, sort of like, well, that's an illegal drug. You don't touch that. That bad things happen if you go down that route. So I really had very little experience with marijuana or anything. Kind of didn't want anything to do with it. Maybe until it got legalized, and then in California here. And then I sort of got a little bit more open, like, well, let me maybe try it out, maybe try some stuff. And I still don't know if I found it to be helpful for me or enjoyable. It's kind of like I'll go into one of these shops and just kind of go, hey, I'm looking, to reduce some pain. I got some neck pain, I got some leg pain, and then sort of relax, have a good night's sleep. And then they kind of go, okay, here, try this, try that. And my experience has been, it's been okay. But it's not something that it's got THC. I feel like there's still some side effects. So I don't know if I don't wake up feeling great usually, but it's one of those, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know, what's a good mix of CBD, and do you want to avoid THC? And then I've got written down at least, I don't know, the 5 ways to take it in or more. There's smoking, there's vaping, there's edibles, there's tinctures, there's oils, there's topicals. So just curious, from your experience, can you help with my confusion, Brock?
Yeah, well, it is very confusing. And I mean, as far as we've come, even in the last 3, 4, 5 years with everything, there's a lot of products out there. There's, like you said, a ton of ways to consume it. And it's all about kind of finding what's right. I went through a phase where, I did microdose certain THC, cannabis based products, and it was helpful. And I would use it primarily like for sleep at night, and sometimes after, excessive training runs where your legs just like, there's endorphins and everything rushing through them to the point where you can't sleep. Like, it's just obnoxious. That's when a little like microdosing with cannabis would really help for me.
And microdosing it's where the amount of, I guess, a psychoactive substance, it's below the threshold to where you would get like the high or other effects that usually people would take it for. It's sort of below that threshold. Is that what microdosing is?
Yeah, like I would say you're still going to feel maybe like just a tinge of a high. But it's enough where you can function in the world. You're not going to be incredibly spacey or slow,
right.
Where you're functioning. But you have to be really careful. And I got to the point where for a little while I would experiment with taking just a very small amount before long runs, just similar to how one might pop a couple of ibuprofen before going for a long run, just because they know it's going to hurt.
Yeah, a little bit of prophylactic.
Yeah, and it can be helpful. but I think also it's like, it's a really fine line, because if you take just a little too much, like
Right.
you can be really dazed and confused out there, so to speak. And it could be a bad situation. So
And
I don't know.
was this via like vaping or what, an edible form or?
Yeah, like I would usually take edibles at that point, and just, to be specific, like for me, and everyone's body is a little different and what they can tolerate, but I would take like 2.5 milligrams to 5 milligrams, usually somewhere in there, really, really low.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So I'm guessing you're not a fan of smoking or inhalation, because I know I'm not. I've never done it. It's just not. I mean, I've tried it, but I try it and I don't like it. I just don't like the whole process at all with my lungs. So I often will do. I've dabbled with edibles, and then I don't actually know what all's in there, sugars and who's not. Maybe that's what I'm having the adverse effects to. For all I know, is what's in the edible besides the active ingredients I'm trying to get.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I don't feel like there's truly the perfect delivery mechanism, but I'm the same. Like, yes, I've smoked before. I'm not going to say I haven't. I've smoked flower, and I've smoked a joint, and then I've also vaped. And for me, like, the smoking doesn't really work well, because I end up coughing, and then I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like it irritates my lungs more. So I typically stay away from that. Vaping can be a little smoother and cleaner for a lot of people, but there's also, there's been so many issues with vaping hardware, and people getting sick in the last year, and people buying cheap hardware, and it being very unregulated. So that whole thing scares me now too.
Yeah.
So, so and then with edibles, if I talk to any of my friends that consume edibles, I would say they all would agree there's very significant inconsistencies from product to product and batch to batch. And even
Oh,
products that
wow.
I've found that are like pretty reputable companies, that make high quality, maybe even more on the organic side of gummies, with like less crappy sugars and stuff. Even those, they're like, it's so weird. Like I had the same amount this time, but like this particular gummy made me like 3 times more stoned, than the other one. And
Yeah.
like it's just it's very tricky to get it consistent all the time. So that's kind of the pitfall with edibles, I think.
Yeah. And I'm guessing is that why you've kind of settled on focusing on uh, basically the topical salve? And I guess is it 6 months ago you released your oil, your CBD oil?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I'm just I've pretty much now gone to just topicals, and really, using my own product. It's been what's worked best for me. It's pretty rare that I consume any THC cannabis anymore. I don't know why. It's just no judgment to anyone that has. It's just I've
Right.
found that the topical CBD products work really well for me.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's just one of those things with THC. If it's almost like a horrible movie or a horrible TV show. Like you got to watch it when you're young. Uh, like I watched this movie Office Space back when I was in high school, and I love that movie. I think it's fantastic. But I've tried to rewatch it with some people, and they watch it and kind of go like, "This is stupid. This is one of the worst movies ever." And I kind of wonder if THC is a little bit like you got to catch it at about the right age range, because I don't think I really tried till I was in my mid late 30s. So maybe I just missed it, and I'm okay with that. So it just doesn't seem to have that great. So I don't have any judgment against it. And sometimes I'm a little bit jealous. I'm like, you feel great. I don't feel that great on this. What, really? Wow. Okay. Good for you.
Yeah, it's so person to person. And I have friends that literally can take a high amount in the morning and function like, I'm like, I would be stoned out of my mind if I took the amount you took, and they can function. And that's great. And then I have people that take like a microdose amount and they have a panic attack. So it's like,
Yeah.
everyone's just so different. And I think for me, uh, maybe it's phases of life, kind of like you said, but I get to the point where now, running a business and having all the responsibilities I do. And I think that's most people, like, you can't really afford to take a little too much of an edible and then be lacking your productivity the rest of the day. Like, you got to get shit done. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I am now. And I certainly have zero judgment. And I have friends and family members and people that have crippling anxiety. And, you know, it's cannabis instead of antidepressants for them. And personally, I would support that all day long, and it works for them. And I think that's fantastic. And they sleep better and they're more well balanced, but it's so individualized.
Absolutely. Have you also noticed, just focusing on CBD based products, do people respond differently as well? Where, some it's, oh man, this is the best thing ever, and then others, it's like, it's okay, I don't know, or is it pretty consistent across most people the way CBD impacts them?
It is different, depending on the person. I think I feel really strongly, and this is why we've kind of formulated our products the way we have, that with CBD, you have to have more potency than THC. So, for instance, like, if someone's going to walk in, and Walgreens and CVS now have CBD products. Most health food stores have CBD products. Like, it's everywhere. So if you're
Yeah.
to walk into one of the stores and just kind of like blindly buy, the middle range price product, which may have like, let's say it's an oil tincture, one of the little bottles with the dropper, you're probably going to get a bottle with maybe 500 milligrams to 750 milligrams total of CBD. You're going to start taking it maybe like half a dropper a day in the beginning. And what's really unfortunate is, from what I've seen, most people aren't really feeling the effects. Some
Right.
people are, but from my experience, people need a higher concentrated amount of full spectrum CBD. So I think really getting up in that range of 1,000, I'll say like 900 milligrams to maybe upwards of 1,200 milligrams for a tincture bottle,
Okay.
barring that it's good quality oil, it's full spectrum, which I can talk about that if you want. What's the difference, full spectrum versus isolate? But it does matter. So
Yeah. So tincture and oil is pretty much interchangeable term. I guess I'm
yeah.
not an old timey alchemist, so some of these terms I've heard them before, but I don't know them in practice. And then it would be good to know what the difference between what do you mean by full spectrum?
So on the well, with CBD, you have full spectrum, which is basically, in most cases now it's from the hemp plant, and it's taking the whole plant, particularly the flower. And people don't always know this, that the hemp plant, like, actually buds flowers just like the marijuana plant. It's very, very similar. But the difference is, with the hemp plant, the flowers really are engineered or genetically different in that they don't have high amounts of THC in them. So a good quality CBD oil is going to take the whole flower and the parts around it, maybe a few of the leaves,
Okay.
and they're going to extract that, ideally with CO2 extraction, which seems to be the cleanest. And then they're going to put it in like a crude oil, and that's really full spectrum. So full spectrum means nothing's really been stripped away. It has the full range of cannabinoids, and cannabidiol is what CBD stands for. And these cannabinoids, there's been discovered so far, just over 100 of these, and they all interact in our body a little bit differently. But full spectrum CBD oil has not just CBD, but it actually has some of these other cannabinoids. And when they interact together, they provide what scientists call the entourage effect. And that's kind of what gives the full range of benefits, whether that's for anxiety or better sleep or depression or whatever. On the other hand, you have isolates, and CBD isolate is literally just the CBD only, just that one cannabinoid kind of isolated to be where it's just CBD. So there will be no trace amounts of THC. And not a lot of people know this, but like a full spectrum CBD oil does have trace amounts of THC, but it's 0.3% or less in order to be legal. And so you might have another, range of cannabinoids like CBN, CBG. There's all these other, scientifically sounding cannabinoids, but a CBD isolate is just CBD. And so why would anyone want just CBD isolate? Personally, I don't know, because I just think it's so inferior by itself compared to a full spectrum. But a lot of people are drug tested. So, government workers, policemen, firemen, like certain corporations still really heavily drug test. And if, God forbid, a full spectrum CBD product hadn't been third party lab tested and it ended up having more than 0.3% THC, that person could, potentially get in trouble or lose their job. So for those people, I'm always like, play it safe. Yeah. Don't do full spectrum, like do an isolate instead.
Otherwise, I'm guessing a lot of people are just victim to the marketing, because, if I look, hey, this is pure CBD and this is full spectrum with something that's like, well, no, I want the pure stuff. I want the pure stuff. I don't want any of this other nonsense. But really, it's that other stuff works together. And nature usually knows best. Nature comes up with the best formulation because it's had tens to thousands, hundreds of years, whatever. It's had a long time to get the formula right. And we think we're smart, but usually we miss something when we create from scratch.
Yeah. 100%.
So the tincture, the oil, what's like a recommended, like, can you use it like some people use ibuprofen where you just drop it, or is it a better kind of like some people use, what is that? It's the other NSAID, aspirin, sort of, okay, I want to prevent heart attack, so I'm going to take a regular dose. Is it one of those like, hey, I want to prevent inflammation, so I'm going to regularly take my CBD oil, or is just sort of depends on where people are at?
Yeah, so really, really good question. So people message me literally every single day and they're like, hey, I've got this ailment, this ailment, this ailment. Like, what form of CBD do you recommend maybe I start with? And first of all, I'm always like, hey, I'm not a doctor. And I always say the same thing every time. Like, this is intended to be medical advice. Like, be careful, do your own research. With that said, if it's anything external, sore muscles, sore joints, aches and pains, whatever, sore back, sore neck, anything sore externally, I always say, consider taking a topical, because topicals, like a salve, for example, like a good salve, is going to just penetrate the muscular layer, and it's going to do all of its work on more of a targeted basis. And usually, if it's a good quality salve or a topical or cream or whatever, you're going to feel it pretty quickly. Whereas the oil tincture, I always say, if you have more like internal or mental health related issues, anxiety, depression, you want to sleep better, you want to just be more calm, you have like serious public speaking fear, take CBD oil and take probably, start low and slow, take like 0.5 milliliters per day. That's like typically half of a dropper full, and stick with it for 30 days, because it does take longer to kind of get in your system internally. And I think a lot of people will take it for like a day or two or three, and they're like, this stuff doesn't work, and they stop. And that's a big mistake with CBD oil. You've got to take it pretty consistently for, I think, at least a month to see if you can feel different.
So does it take some, okay, so sort of for that acute, I want some relief now, the topical, and that I got some other stuff that really is more of an internal, it's going to take you some time, but your results are kind of going to be better with the CBD oil, the tincture, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think, if you have both of those issues, like you're looking for better sleep, better, balance with your anxiety, and you get sore muscles, like it's good to take both the tincture and the topical and just kind of see how your body does after a month.
Yeah. And kind kind of with all these things that are more issues of the mind, whether it's anxiety, feeling down, I always, because antidepressants, I had some antidepressant use back in my past. I had some depression, and for me it was okay. I just got to get out of this funk now, but I need to get some visibility, get my head up, so that I can figure out some other ways to have a better long-term solution, whether it's meditation or a good
Yeah.
exercise routine, or getting out of some relationships that maybe you shouldn't be in. So
Yeah.
I always like the idea of having better options that are maybe have way less side effects, because antidepressant side effects are really they, they are not to be disregarded. They are strong, and they are challenging. And but when you're in a state, they're life saving. They give you room to breathe, to get over it, and get your life going again. And so it's kind of cool that now there's an additional option, that you don't have to smoke, you don't have to eat something that has God who knows what else. So I'm kind of curious about this. So I think one last question I wanted to ask you is sort of, as a business owner, because I know a lot of our listeners, maybe they want to start a business, or maybe they have no interest, but the challenges a business owner comes across, it's not different than anybody's life challenges, in other parts of their life, whether it's a corporate job or relationships. What are, just as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you come across way more challenges that probably you never even thought you'd come across. What's maybe what's an example of a big challenge, and how did you overcome it? What was, you know, ways of thinking, ways of handling the emotions, and maybe it isn't even business related, but just sort of that you've made some amazing things happen. You've gone from a completely different life as a professional cyclist to now running uh, basically a great company looking to heal people with CBD products, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, as other entrepreneurs know, there's always challenges. There's always surprises, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. I think one of our biggest challenges as a company that markets and sells CBD products has been being able to market on all these platforms like Facebook, Instagram, even Amazon, even Google AdWords, all these platforms that normally any company that was based as an e-commerce platform would be able to have a ton of ads on, and we can't do that right now because of some of the restrictions and these companies being scared of the federal stance still on CBD, which is changing, but still they're very shy. And so it's really been challenging, but also a gift to seek to be resourceful in other ways, to find other ways to market. And, when I realized, and it's crazy because, we're going on 2 years pretty soon here. Like it hasn't changed. We still can't market on Facebook or Instagram, but what we did in the beginning is just build a really amazing ambassador team of over 130 athletes, mostly in the running space, but we have people in all different areas. And we've just treated them like family and created a loyalty and a brand that they're excited and proud to be a part of. And they have literally been like our marketing force. And it's been cool because I just have found the more you take care of people, and I think that's with any business, and even if it's a company that can market on Instagram or Facebook or all these other platforms, like I think people oversee, entrepreneurs and business owners overlook the asset that your existing customer base can be in terms of marketing your product. Because if you do a good job, good news spreads. We all know it. Yeah, if you do a bad job, that spreads even faster. But
Yeah.
That's been one of my main challenges that we still continue to battle every day, but it's turned into like a gift in a way.
That's such a cool outlook, to basically see a challenge as, wait, this has actually forced you to focus on the aspects that actually make a good business, which is fantastic product, and then fantastic care of people, both those that use your product and those that promote your product. Whereas I'm sure so often, I know this is one of the things that kept me from starting this podcast is, thinking of all the logistical stuff of, well, what's my Facebook marketing going to be like? What's the website? All this stuff that really it helps if you've got that other stuff as a base. But if you don't have the base good product, you're not really ultimately serving people. None of that stuff matters. And it's kind of really cool how you view that. It sort of reminds me of how you viewed running as, it was a necessity, and you were just going to figure it out, and eventually you loved it. And I'm glad you figured out how to love the challenge of not being able to market in traditional ways and finding some other ways to make sure your quest continues to give people an alternative to ibuprofen and these other pain relievers that we so commonly take, like Tic Tacs, and we don't even know how much they're harming us. We're on a treadmill where it almost creates dependency on it without any benefit. So this is really cool. Any last words, Brock, before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I'm really grateful to be on, and I think your podcast is awesome, man. I think you're going to continue to impact a lot of people, and keep it up, because it's an entrepreneurial project in and of itself. Running a podcast is definitely a lot of work. So
yeah, I know you've done a podcast before, and so people can find you prevailbotanicals.com, I believe. Any other ways they should? And we'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. Any other ways people should get a hold of you or want them to know before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always available just on Instagram. It's my personal is I am Brock Cannon, and Prevails is at Prevail Botanicals. So yeah, I would love to say hi to anyone that feels like they would like to say hello.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, Brock, for being on the show, and good talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.